Session 77, Surah Fatiha, the Qur'an summarized. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. We begin with the name of Allah, who is most gracious and merciful, and Namdu Nusallillah Rasulihil Kareem, blessings on Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the last and final prophet. We are on Surah Fatiha, and in that on verse 5. Idina Siratul Mustaqim, show us, put us on the right path, O Allah. Zaid bin Shwana, once a renowned Jewish scholar, stated, I had seen all the attributes orderly prophesied in Torah about the last prophet in Muhammad, peace be upon him, except two character traits which I had not been able to verify. First, that his patience, sagacity, perseverance would Varun drive out his annoyance. He need not be enraged. And second, the more anyone ill-bred, maroon, stupid man would be impudent, the more anyone ill-bred, maroon, stupid man would be impudent, insolent, mistreat him, the excessive overmatching would be his patience, forbearance. He said, I developed a salubrious, decent, pleasant relationship, hello high, with the Prophet, peace be upon him, awaiting an opportunity to verify these two predicted qualities in Torah. Once Muhammad, peace be upon him, came out of his mud hut. Ali Razilullah Ta'ala was with him. A Bedouin came to him and stated in lingua franca, O Prophet of Allah, my people have become believers, and I have told them that if they converted, they'd be nourished by Allah, and now famine prevails, that I fear that these irresolute, ignorant people may not resign, turn back. If you consider it appropriate, kindly endow something for them. Muhammad, peace be upon him, looked endearingly towards a companion, perhaps it was Ali Razilullah Ta'ala anhu, who said, O Prophet, peace be upon you, there's nothing with us. So that is the Jew, intervened and said, O Muhammad, if you promise to give me a certain amount of dates from a particular individual's garden, when these ripe, I can make an advance payment and collect the dates at the appointed time. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said he could agree if exactitude about the garden wasn't made a condition, and only the weight of the dates was fixed. I promptly agreed, considering his proposal irrefragable, irrefutable, and paid 80 miskal, 640 grams of gold in advance. The Prophet, peace be upon him, gave away the entire gold to the Bedouin and directed him to be just and use this to fulfill the needs of the people. When there were 2 to 3 days left for the delivery of dates, I went to Muhammad, who had just returned after a burial and was sitting close to a wall with a group of companions that included Abu Bakr Razilullah Ta'ala anhu, Umar Razilullah Ta'ala anhu, Usman Razilullah Ta'ala anhu. I grabbed him by the shirt jobbishly, ill-mannered, aggressively, and shouted at him insolently, O Muhammad, why don't you repay my loan? By God, I know you, all the descendants of Abu Talib, his grandfather, you are all twisty, extremely dishonest people. It was a lot more than what Umar Razilullah Ta'ala anhu could bear, could digest. Umar demurred, objected, stared me in a huff and extreme anger, and rebuked me, saying, O enemy of Allah, by God, if I weren't restrained by the Prophet, I'd have slain you. But the Prophet kept looking at me calm, placidly, told Umar Razilullah Ta'ala with a smiling face, Umar, myself and this man required something more urgently, required to be placated, pacified, that you should have asked me to be particular in giving him his right, what is due to him, and advise him to use a better way of demanding, asking. Now take him along, give him his right, and 20 sars, 2 months in addition, for you spoke to him harshly. Without a hassle, Umar Razilullah Ta'ala complied like a flash, took me along, gave me the due and 20 sars dates in surplus. On my inquiry about the extra 20 sars, Umar Razilullah Ta'ala replied, this is exactly what the Prophet, peace be upon him, has ordered. Then I inquired if he recognized me, but he didn't. Thereafter I divulged, I am Zaid bin Shran. He said, the one who is a great Jew scholar? I said, precisely, I'm the man. He said, morosely, what a great man. And look at the way you ridiculed, mistreated the Prophet. I gave out the actual purpose and said, I make you a witness that I adopt this faith and give away half my wealth in the way of Allah and give away half my wealth in the way of Allah. Then went to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and became a believer at his hand. Thereafter he participated in many battles and embraced martyrdom in the Battle of Mu'tah, 9 after Hijrah, 631 AD. Jama'ul Fuwaid references Khasail Nabi Uswa Rasul Akram. While at Makkah in 619 AD, 619 AD, the Prophet, peace be upon him, taking Zayd bin Harisa along, went to Taif to persuade the people adopt monotheism. Having walked to the place 60 kilometers, he began preaching the pagans, which peeved, annoyed the blinkered, narrow-minded, blithering, contemptible people. The Sardars' heads there pumped up the hooligans and the Jobs, aggressive, ill-mannered young boys. When he would be busy in the sermon, the Prophet would be busy in the sermon, speaking, pleading the gatherings to disavow pantheism, give up their idols, all their deities, demigods, and worship one and the only Allah who had created them, these demented, mentally sick boys used to stone him. To an extent, his clothes would be drooping in blood. To an extent that his clothes would be drooping in blood. The spouting blood would gather in his shoes and become sticky to an effect that it would be difficult for the Prophet, peace be upon him, to remove the shoes for ablution. The Jobs, hooligans, ruffians, the scatterbrains, so scorned, abused, tracked, pestered, and stoned him that he was forced to take refuge in a garden courtyard. Once at this very place, being stoned, he was injured to a degree that he fainted. Once at this very place, being stoned, he was injured to a degree that he fainted. Zaid bin Harsa Rasulullah Ta'ala carried him on the shoulder away from the township where he regained consciousness. Even after this ineffably, inexpressibly horrendous, debilitating, tragic experience, wherein not a single person converted, the Prophet, peace be upon him, prayed to Allah to show them the light and didn't curse them. On return from Taif, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "They haven't believed in one and the only Allah. I hope their coming generations would become monotheists." Uswa Rasul Akram. Not only in kindness, tolerance, patience, perseverance, and magnanimity, there was none to overmatch the Prophet, peace be upon him, in generosity. Once he had 6 riyals, he gave away 4, but couldn't reconcile sleep that night for having 2 riyals in the house. Hazrat Aisha, Rasulullah Ta'ala, his wife, said it was a flea bite, a trivial inconvenience. He could just dispose these in the morning. He could just dispose these in the morning. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "O Humaira, her honorary name, who knows I may live till the morning or not? Who knows I may live till the morning or not?" Shmal al-Tirmidhi. Anas Rasulullah Ta'ala states that the Prophet, peace be upon him, never hoarded anything for the next day. Shmal al-Tirmidhi. He'd use, consume, distribute everything, not storing anything that it would be required tomorrow as well. 107 Surah Al-Maun, verse 4. فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ. Not only the disbelievers, there is a category among the believers also, the quasi so-called believers who are skeptical, doubtful about resurrection and accountability before Allah. Ruined, ditched are some of the people. As per the translation, the words, precise words, ruined, ditched are some of the people offering prayers, salah. Now, explanation. In the present era, there are the people just born as believers, having no religious education and retain a casual link with their faith, who object to the Sunnah. Usually, they have had early education in missionary schools, convents, cathedrals, etc. Or they have lived in a secular society, or their religious education is neglected by the elders. And the cursory treatment of theology in the classes cannot imbibe in them even the fundamentals of their faith. Such doubts are created in their childhood years that they remain skeptical all their lives, not sure of anything. Victims of cause and effect of secular thinking, they try to assess and evaluate their beliefs vis-a-vis the principles, theories, and logic laid down by the disbelieving intellectuals. The directions ordained and enjoined on them by Allah are verified and tested in the mental slots of scatterbrain moles, the disbelieving man, and the schismatic, doubting believer. I repeat, the directions ordained and enjoined on them by Allah are verified and tested in the mental slots of scatterbrain moles, the disbelieving man, and the schismatic, doubting believer. In the ordinary way, in the ordinary course of events, their prayers, salah, are half-hearted and perfectionary. 107 Surah Al-Ma'un verse 5 Allazina hum an salatihim sahun, who are negligent, careless about their prayers. Translation, who are negligent, careless about their prayers. Expression which became scalpy, heavy, and perfunctory, and strike no fear of Allah. Such believers offer prayers but disregard the very essence, purpose of establishing prayers, salah, that is, to develop the fear of Allah, be mindful of the rights of other people, and order their lives according to Sunnah. Such believers offer prayers but disregard the very essence, purpose of establishing prayer, salah, that is, to develop the fear of Allah, be mindful of the rights of other people, and order their lives absolutely according to Sunnah. It is a reminder that Allah is the master of our bodies. Such people are not particular in offering prayers with Jamaat, congregation, remain busy or relaxed and just gather themselves perforce to offer prayers at the going or dying time. And do not make a deliberate effort to stand before the Rabb with complete presence of mind. And do not make a deliberate effort to stand before the Rabb with complete presence of mind. They are indisposed to offering prayers at their timings as per Sunnah and dig out unreliable sources, allowing them to combine all or a couple of prayers in routine. They offer prayers to be in good order, repetition with people around. Some of them begin offering prayers with dedication and devotion, but over a passage of time turn in just a physical habit, a ritual, rather than a gleaming, permanent novena to Allah, spiritual sublimation, submission in utter humility and gratitude to Allah for all that we have received, for all that we have received. The prayers should pave the way for the forgiveness of our perpetual, persistent bloomers, serious mistakes, blunders, making us tolerant, better, accommodative, helpful human beings, making us tolerant, better, accommodative, helpful human beings. 107 Surah Al-Ma'un verse 6 Allazina hum yura'un, those who perform for display appreciation. Translation, those who perform for display appreciation. Explanation now. Want to nurture a good public opinion. At occasions, even more than that, they aspire to appear numinous, divine, awe-inspiring, to reap material and other benefits from people. Prayers or performing any pious deed for any purpose except to earn the pleasure of Allah is obviously a nutty, eccentric variation of shirk, that is, having other gods. Such people are forewarned that they shall not be treated by Allah as being within the orbit of the believers in the hereafter. Among such apparently religious people are those who do not help others in very ordinary and routine matters because faith and fear of Allah are not delved into their hearts. Among such apparently religious people are those who do not help others in very ordinary and routine matters because faith and fear of Allah are not delved in their hearts. 107 Surah Al-Ma'un verse 7 وَيَمْنَوْنَ الْمَعُونَ Translation, and are not enduring, do not share in the neighborly needs. Translation, and are not enduring, do not share in the neighborly needs. Explanation, how can they have the heart to part with zakah? For they have a very limited view, one track, miserly orientation. Obviously, ignorant of the very fundamentals of the faith. A believer who is not sympathetic, good, and straight in his dealings does not know his faith. He is the best in faith who is the best in his dealings. A believer who is not sympathetic, good, and straight in his dealings does not know his faith. He is the best in faith who is the best in his dealings. Abu Hurairah Radhiyallahu Ta'ala Anhu reports that the Prophet, peace be upon him, stated, a pious believer is a palace and abode of affection, love, and sincerity, and there is nothing good in an individual who neither loves other people, nor others care about him, and he remains aloof, isolated, and detached from everyone. However, remaining away from people for the safety of one's faith and spiritual being is exempted from this saying of the Prophet. Razulullah Ta'ala Anhu, Ahmad, Bahiki, Hiyatul Muslimin. Mawiyah bin Hada Razulullah Ta'ala Anhu reported that the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, it is a neighbor's right he be visited, cared for, looked after, treated, and if he falls sick, his or her funeral should be attended in case he or she dies, to be assisted in performing the rites of burial as per sunnah. It is his or her right to be provided with clothes if the neighbor is without appropriate clothing, also food, etc., if hungry. Assistance in such cases becomes a believer's religious duty. Assistance in such cases becomes a believer's religious duty for which he will be held accountable on the day of judgment, for which he will be held accountable on the day of judgment. In case there is an occasion for him to celebrate, be happy for some remarkable success, etc., the neighbor must be facilitated. Conversely, in case the neighbor is in some deep trouble, great difficulty, hard time, he or she must be consoled, encouraged, shouldn't raise his building higher than neighbors without consulting them, and that might deny him fresh air, sunlight, or create some other problems for him, and not bother the neighbor by the smoke of his kitchen. Tabrani. 108 Surah Al-Qasr verse 2 فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ. Therefore, after prayers, salah before your Rabb therefore offer prayers, salah before your Rabb for the resounding success and sacrifice in his name as a measure of gratitude. Therefore offer prayers, salah before your Rabb for the resounding success and sacrifice in his name as a measure of gratitude. Prayer, salah, is the most superior way of thanking Allah. One's mind, heart, body, and soul, all organs are invariably involved. One's mind, heart, body, and soul, all organs are invariably involved. The Prophet, peace be upon him, stated, worship Allah, offer prayer, salah, as though you see Allah. And if that's not the state, at least you should be aware that He watches you and you are right before Him in His presence. The Prophet, peace be upon him, stated, worship Allah, offer prayers, salah, as though you see Allah. And if that's not the state, at least you should be aware that He watches you and you are right before Him in His presence. Bukhari. That's all for today. Jazakallah. Please pray for me. Ex Brigadier Mustansir Billah.